boat. Any rap nigga get a free throw. Man down, call her Amber Lambs, tell them breathe, bro. Tell her
that we're fighting for was for those that have found comfort in the status quo to come to terms with their barbarity. The actual issues we face as a society is not the responsibility of the victims to answer for. It is very telling when people want basic things like the ability to vote like everyone else or an end to a violent ethnic cleansing that you're met with resistance because how dare you want to be a human and see humanity in others, right? So, how can Kamala Harris be comparable to Fannie Lou Hamer? Fannie Lou was fighting for her people's humanity to be recognized and was brutalized by the police for it. Kamala is a cop, a top cop. Her words, not mine.
I think that part of what happens is, there are those, especially in this race and as it is gearing up, people are going to say, oh, Kamala was po-po. She Hi everyone, this is Attorney General Kamala Harris. As California's top cop. Now I stand before you as the top cop of the top cop of the biggest state in the country. No offense.
And also understand she was a prosecutor for her whole legal career. She was always working with the state.
By way of background, you've heard a little bit, but I think it's important to understand that because it puts in context a lot of the work that I've done and the work that I hope to do as we go forward. So, yes, I am one of two daughters of parents who met when they were active in the civil rights movement as graduate students at the University of California, Berkeley in the 60s, the 1960s. So for my sister and me, that meant that we grew up pretty much surrounded full-time by adults who spent their time marching and shouting about this thing called justice. So for me, I often tell this story, but growing up, the heroes of that movement in my mind and many minds were the architects of the civil rights movement. And they, of course, were the lawyers. So it was Charles Hamilton Houston and Constance Baker Motley and Thurgood Marshall, who were doing the very important work of taking the skill of this great profession of law and translating the passion in the streets to the courtrooms of our country, and doing the important work there of reminding folks who unfortunately needed to be reminded of that great promise that we articulated in 1776, which of course is that we are all and should be treated as equals. So I decided I wanted to be a lawyer at a very young age. I went on to Howard University, and then
Fannie Lou Hamer and Kamala are not on the same tier of no.
And I'll share with you, I was very excited about it, and I asked my family to gather around to share with them my decision, and so they all came around the living room and said, okay, Kamala, what have you decided you're going to do in your pursuit and fight for justice? And I said, well, I've decided I'm going to be a prosecutor. And you're all laughing because you probably have a sense of who my family is. And you can then therefore imagine that at best it was a curious decision. And in some ways, and with some, I did have to defend it like one would a thesis. But what I said then is what I absolutely maintain today after a career as a prosecutor. Law enforcement has such a profound and direct impact on the most vulnerable among us, and has as its responsibility and job to not only give those often voiceless people a voice in a system, not only give them safety, but also give them dignity. So I decided that's the work I wanted to do, and I went straight out of law school to what was then considered to be one of the best DA's offices in the country. And
it's inconceivable to put Fannie Lou Hamer, someone who was integral to the Freedom Summer movement, organizing to get more Africans registered to vote. A movement that was met with much violence by those that didn't see them as humans. The pushback came from everyone, from civilians to politicians and the KKK. And then those civilians and politicians were also part of the KKK. Oh, don't forget about the cops. Say word too. Creating a moment in time prompted a weird theatrical movie being made called Mississippi Burning. Freedom Summer was the backdrop. It's a true story about the 3 civil rights workers, James Chaney, Andrew Goodman, and Michael Sweriner. Sorry if I mispronounced your last name. Rest up, fam. Who were killed by the KKK and police, which is basically the same thing, KKK and police in Philadelphia, Mississippi. To compare that person to someone who claims to be the progressive prosecutor with programs like BOT, which stands for Back on Track, a program that her supporters claim was a success, but the statistics and reality of the situation show otherwise. To cite a Jacobin article about Kamala's BOT program, according to an internal work document from the DA's office, just 241 individuals completed the BOT program between 2007 and 2011. 308 individuals left without finishing. While these numbers raise some additional questions like how many total individuals were in the program at a given time, and while the 2010 to 2011 figure doesn't appear to add up, the figures do suggest the scale of the program. It was very small. Pause site. The issue, it seems for many, is how to filter information and understanding their environment for information. So it leaves people with the convoluted understanding of media literacy. Media literacy alone is just understanding how to cite sources and gauge tone. But understanding the information ecosystem can inform you on why certain information is readily available for you and why other sources take an effort to find. So sure, you can look at Fox News as right-wing nonsense, but why are they given space to be that? Things that make you go, right? Right? Maybe. Of course, you can argue the First Amendment codifies your ability to say what you would like to do here. But why are certain people or groups afforded different consequences? Nevertheless, to cite this article, again, over the same time period, which was 2007 to 2011, there were 563 felony cannabis convictions in San Francisco, according to data gathered from the DA's office. On January 1st, 2008, the city had 1,849 active felony drug cases, and by year's end, 14,500 felony drug arrests. Pause site again. Now again, remember, these are first-time alleged offenders that she had go through her program. Like, these weren't repeat offenders who got to go through her program. These were people who who were alleged to commit whatever crime, had to plead guilty, and then enter the program, and there was a bunch of prerequisites that if they did not follow, they got in trouble by going to prison. Okay, back to it. Resume site.
Our goals of public safety. And so, for example, in Back on Track, we require the offender to plead guilty. Why? Because he's guilty. Right? The guy was out there slinging drugs on the corner. And some people would like to suggest it's a victimless crime. I would tell you it's not. You were guilty. You were out there. And by the way, I don't feel sorry for you. And I am not going to forgive you for committing a crime. But I do know what you're capable of after you've been held accountable. So let's get on the path of
insight. To assume everyone's guilty until proven innocent seems a bit backwards, no? Again, to compare Kamala to Fannie Lou Hamer is disturbing. Just because they both spoke at the DNC, Fannie was speaking and looking for a seat to deconstruct the system. Kamala is a minion of the system. They are not the same in any stretch of the imagination. People were outside of the 2024 DNC in Chicago protesting the ethnic cleansing of the people of Palestine by the U.S.'s greatest ally with the help from the U.S.
Your house, 13 years old, Sama Abuled,
Say it again. Say it again. Mock them again. Mock the children again. Do it again. Do it again.
18 years old. 18 years old. Yusuf Hassan. 8 years old. Turn around and join the uncommitted delegates in the protest. The blood of these children is on yours.
What Kamala's moment is more in line with is what happened at the DNC in 1968. That was also in Chicago. People were protesting another bloody conflict that liquidated the fourth most American soldiers, which was 58,209, to be exact, when it was all said and done. And that was the Vietnam War. Which that doesn't include all the innocent Vietnamese people, plus the residual civilian deaths from the U.S. using the chemical Agent Orange.
Turn to a clip of Bobby Seale speaking in Chicago in 1968, outside the Democratic convention during the protests.
We go forth as human beings to remove these pigs, these hogs in the power structure, murdering and brutalizing people not only here in the confines of racist, decadent America, but murdering and brutalizing and oppressing people all out the world. That when we go forth to deal with them, that they're going to always send out their racist, scary, rotten pigs to occupy the people, to occupy the community, such as the way they have this park here occupied. Now, in just a second, there's a lesson that Minister of Defense Huey P. Newton teaches, that whenever the people disagree with the political decisions that's been made upon their heads, that whenever the people disagree with those political decisions, the racist power structure sends in guns and force to see that the people accept those political decisions. But we are here as revolutionaries to let them know that we refuse to accept those political decisions that maintain the oppression of our black people and other people in the world.
To cite a History Channel article about Agent Orange, Fred A. Wilcox, the author of Scorched Earth, Legacies of Chemical Warfare in Vietnam, told the Vietnamese news source VN Express International the U.S. government refuses to compensate Vietnamese victims of chemical warfare because to do so would mean admitting that the U.S. committed war crimes in Vietnam. This would open the door to lawsuits that would cost the government billions of dollars. Insight. Sounds familiar, doesn't it? Huh? So, that is probably why they won't admit what their funding in occupied Palestine and the West Bank, along with other places, have led to war crimes. The more you know. Certain microphones aren't treated the same. The 2024 DNC denied a request for a Palestinian American from the uncommitted movement to speak. But they had an Israeli-American couple whose son was taken as a POW on October 7th. They let them speak.
There's been a lot of talk about unity this week, so why won't y'all allow a Palestinian speaker to address the convention? And by simply saying that Trump would be worse for Arab Americans, is that not the campaign taking their votes for granted?
No, we're absolutely not taking their votes for granted. I think as it relates to uncommitted delegates at this convention, we're proud and glad that they are here. We've worked to engage them throughout the convention. We're proud of the fact that we held panel conversations with members of the uncommitted movement. We're proud that the Vice President herself engaged with leadership in the uncommitted movement in Michigan a couple of weeks ago. That's why the campaign has continued to engage with leadership of the uncommitted movement throughout this convention. And I think what they will see, what folks who continue to demonstrate and protest we'll see is a vice president, what has already been clear and what they'll continue to see for the rest of this campaign, is a vice president who is committed to ending the violence, ending the conflict, making sure that we resolve this conflict with a permanent ceasefire that allows Israel to fully secure itself, that fully continues and make sure that we have full humanitarian aid, but also make sure that Gazans are able to peacefully live and prosper in Gaza. That's what she's going to relentlessly fight for as President of the United States, and it does stand in stark contrast to our opponent, whose only North Star is what benefits him, does not care about national security, does not care about global security, is only interested in his own personal self-interest. And so when you're looking for somebody who's going to serve as commander-in-chief, when you're looking at temperament, judgment, ability to handle complex global situations, there's only one candidate in this race who fits the bill, and that's the vice president. All right. With that, I think we will wrap. But thank you all.
So you're rating sadness and like loss. Do you see how all of this is just the same story and song over and over and over again? You have a power structure that is oppressing people. You get the oppressed people to also oppress people. Then the oppressed people, then those oppressed people are trying to fight for some kind of dignity, and then they're told that they can't because they're not the right kind of oppressed people. Nasty work.
Yes, sir! This nigga spitting. Damn, nigga!
Now, during the protests outside of the Chicago DNC in 1968 against the military coup funded by the West, using people from American Vietnam as meat for the meat grinder, or some call it the Vietnam War for short, 8 people were arrested and charged with conspiracy, crossing state lines to incite a riot. For more context about that Chicago 8 trial, that crossing state lines to incite a riot charge was given to Bobby Seale because he was only at the rally one day. He had came in to speak and then he immediately left. And whatever else one could be charged with if you're anti-colonialism. Those people were Rennie Davis, David Dillinger, John Fornes, Tom Hayden, Abby Hoffman, Jerry Rubin, Lee Weiner, and Bobby Seale. The case was a spectacle, and the Chicago 8 became the Chicago 7 after Bobby Seale was tried separately from them. The Black Panther co-founder was bound and gagged for several appearances at court because he wanted to exercise his Sixth Amendment privilege to represent himself.
I was walking back to my defense table, and he says, what did he say, looking at the clerk, trying to figure out? And I said, you're a racist, a fascist, and a bigot if you're going to sit up here and deny me my Sixth Amendment right to defend myself. You got George Washington and John Jefferson up there in those pictures behind you. They were both slave owners, so you're acting in the same manner, etc. I mean, I got another colloquialist dealing with Dred Scott on, those issues that Gerald Lefcourt and these guys had given me this information behind the scenes. Because when I would come in the courtroom, they would hand me papers, hand me all the news clippings, what happened within the day. I mean, so in my attempt to defend myself, so it went on for 6 weeks with this judge, believing that I'm supposed to accept Bill Kunstler. It wasn't that Bill Kunstler was a bad lawyer. Bill Kunstler was a lawyer for the New York 21 and other Black Panther Party members, had been to legal conferences in Oakland, California, because we used to network our legal teams, with the Black Panther Party, other cases of Black Panther Party members. It was that here I'm in a confrontation that, wait a minute, who the hell does this judge think he is? I was stuck on, here's the rule, Sixth Amendment, boom, boom, boom. Therefore, if I say I want to defend myself, he's going to deny the right. Therefore, the whole hell as I'm concerned, he's denying that. It's going to get appealed. But at points, I sit in the courtroom, said nothing, maybe 1 or 2 days. Somebody mentioned my name. I jump up and attempt to defend myself. I object. Sit that man down. No, I object. This man is talking about me, and I have a right to say this kind of stuff. So, next thing you know, we're in a confrontation. Send the jury out. Well, Dick Schultz, the prosecutor, gets up and lies one morning. We're getting into 6 weeks of this, and says that I told the Black Panthers in the audience before the judge came in, before court was convened, to threaten. I says, you're a liar. You're a dirty, rotten liar. I mean, this is in front of the judge now. I'm telling Schultz that. Boom, 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 boom. I says, we have a right to defend ourselves if the marshals jump on us. And I walked up spitting, angrily shooting off the mouth in shelter space, and I'll defend myself. If you strike me, I wanted to say I'll kick you. My point is,
or some other similar word.
At another point, all these marshals attacked me. Judge Julius Hoffman had this big guy. Some of these guys were moonlighting from the Cook County Jail, and he hated all of us. He's a big black cartoon caricature of something like the big black bald-headed Russian. He had a very light-complected African American guy. I nicknamed him Goliath, And this guy comes around, busts me in the chest. When I'm standing up, first he knocks Dave Dillinger on the top of the table, busts me in the chest, slamming me in my chair. With the chairs in the courtroom had wheels on them, I go sailing back. I'm sailing back. All these other marshals are coming in, and boom, next thing I know, I'm cussing the judge out again about my Sixth Amendment rights. My arm is being almost broken. My other leg is being drugged by another marshal. They're trying to pick me up off the floor. I'm still cussing this judge out. I'm in pain. Finally, this judge make orders to them take me in the back. They put me in a chair, a metal folding chair, the very first day of being gagged, metal handcuffs and leg cuffs to the metal structure of the metal chair, and some tape over my mouth, and pick me up, sitting in the chair, 2 or 3 marshals on each side, bring me in the courtroom once it's convened, sit me down, and, of course, Bill Kunstler and a wine glass, everybody. This is medieval torture. I don't see how you can do this. The jury comes in. A jury member's tears is running down her eyes. She can't stand this stuff.
But it makes an interesting political point, though.
It was not only a political point. This man was going to the extremes.
Yeah.
And then I was told to shake my head or something as to whether or not I would not disrupt the courtroom anymore. And the next thing I know, I'm mumbling under the tape. I can talk. I want my constitutional right. This is what's happening. And then they picked me up, and then I remembered something, and a lot of my old readings of all my African-American history is a person who's pulling at their chains is acting in the manner of a free man. So clang, 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 the metal cuffs against the metal structure of the chair, clang, clang, clang. Well, this disrupts the courtroom. Send the jury out, boom, 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 boom. Everybody's in disarray. They take me out, etc. My point is the next day they have me in a wooden chair with padded straps, hospital straps.
Being anti-war, anti-genocide, and all the other antis, which fall under the anti-colonialism umbrella, bring the ire of the establishment.
Wow.